We're on 72B. I am Bays, Ahmed Bays. Uh, we got to the second two dots. We'll read over the first two dots. It's like 7 lines from the top. In the English, it's the second column in 72B1. Betava Bashuk, she spins wool in the market. I'm Rabbi Huda Amar Shmuel. Bamaros Rosel Livnei Adam. The reason that this is a problem, a divorceable thing, is that she's showing her arms to people in the street. Rav Chisda Amar Avimi Betava Varad. Can I get pun out? Rav Chisda said in the name of Avimi that she is spinning in the way that it goes in between her legs. So it's bringing attention to in between her legs, and that is the problem. The top Tosos brings an explanation of the Rach that Vitama Vereta, instead of, I guess according to Rashi, Bitava she's spinning Varad. I think Rashi must understand that is, well, he said it's misraded. Exactly what that means, but Tosfos brings the Rach, says the word Varad, I guess is more similar to what we would call Varod in modern Hebrew is pink, but she was spinning red thread, and it's seems to be the color of the thread was showing up on her face and making her face more red, and that is chutzpah and pritzos. Oh, Radad. Radad could be dripping or moist. That doesn't seem to be what it's talking about here. It could be to lower, to flatten, to stamp, or to beat. That might be according to Rashi, or to stretch. So it could be that she's spinning the wool and stretching it, so she's bringing attention to parts of her body that should be not attention to. Whereas according to Tosos, bringing from the Rach, it's something about the red thread, and it's coming on her face. This seems to be her face, not the lower face, the way Rashi was talking about from its red. Now, what's the problem with this? I'm not sure. But in this book, Remendel Kaplan was a Rabbi at HTC before I guess he went to Philadelphia, and he had his brother of Herzl, who was also at HTC, but I think he was at HTC his whole life. I think Rav Herzl, I don't know if both of them or just Rav Herzl, one of them learned in Baranovich, I guess, from Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. So in this book, there's a story that I guess that Beryl Wine told them, because I guess Beryl had him at the HTC, and there was a l'chaim, a boy from the yeshiva got engaged, and the girl was wearing a red dress. So I guess Remendel, if I remember the story, I haven't read it in many years, but I think Remendel was felt it was a very unsneous, improper thing. They didn't use that word, but it was an improper thing for the Kala to be wearing a red dress. So it could be that we had something a few blot ago about colored clothes, actually, but maybe the red is something about that idea that this book that Remendel Kaplan was saying, but the if you look in the reason that I'm not sure that's that I have a little bit of trouble with that shot, not in the Tosos, but is that in one of the keynotes of Tisha B'Av, I think it's the keynote where we talk about the children of the Kohen Gadol, who were both sold as slaves, and then the owner said, "Oh, I have the most beautiful slave," and the other said, "I have the most beautiful female slave, and they said, "Oh, so let's have them make a baby. Imagine how beautiful the baby's going to be, and we'll make a lot of money by selling this slave baby." And they stayed apart the whole night. And then in the morning, when light came in the window, they realized it was the brother and the sister, and they hugged each other till they died together. This is what the Kina seems to say. So in that, I think there's something in that Kina that implies that she was wearing a red or that a fancy dress would be a red dress to wear. Also, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure that in Eishes Chayil,
What they call it in English,
scarlet, right, or crimson, yeah, right. So there, it didn't seem that she was getting the wool for the other people.
No,
The scarlet.
combination style, yeah, it means, doesn't it mean that she makes her own clothes?
Well, that was Darsha Tzemru Fishtim, but Taskva Chayfetz Kapeha. She gets wool and linen, and she makes with the actions of her hands. But Chagra Oz Masneha. No, that's not it. Losir Levesa Mishale Kichal Besa Levushanim. She wasn't afraid to her house from snow, whatever that means. Kichal Besa Levushanim, because her whole household is dressed in crimson wool garments. So I guess I don't know what the Rishonim say here, but I guess she's not afraid if it's going to get cold because she has nice warm clothes for her family. But Shanim is red clothes. So if she has girls, the girls were also dressed in red. So again, unless it's one of the newer, the more modern chumras and tznius. Okay. She speaks with everyone. I'm Rabbi Huda. So that's if she speaks with everyone, that's the reason that the husband can divorce her and she loses the ksuva. One thing I have to mention, a correction. I've mentioned several times over the past few months that if a field is mortgaged, Ruvain had borrowed money from someone else. Let's say Ruvain borrowed money from Yehuda, and the field was mortgaged to it. And then Ruvain sold his field to Shimon. I said Yehuda can collect the field from Shimon if Ruvain can't pay it back. But I said that Ruvain will have to pay Yehuda back for the field that Yehuda lost. That is not correct. So when Yehuda buys a field that was mortgaged, it stays mortgaged. So Yehuda takes a risk by buying it. Yehuda is not in Beis Din able to sue Ruvain to get the money back for the field. However, Ruvain has a moral obligation, I guess Medina Shemayim, to make Yehuda whole again and pay him for the field. But that's not something that's enforceable in Beis Din. And I mentioned it a few times in the past few months. I think I said that Yehuda would receive the money back from Ruvain after Ruvain's creditor took the field, and I was wrong about that. So I have to mention that to clear the record. She speaks with everyone. She's flirting. She's playing with the young men. Amar Rabba Barachana. I think we mentioned this last week, but it doesn't hurt to review it. Rabba Barachana said, "Zimna chada hava kazina basrei Mar Ukva." I was once walking behind Mar Ukva in the street. Chazise lahi Aravia Taviyasva. There was a certain not Jewish woman who was sitting. Kashadia pilcha v'tava varad keneged paneha, and she was spinning, and varad. So either this is the same machlokas that Rashi and the Rach and Tosos that I just mentioned. Either she was spinning it and pulling the thread in between her legs, or according to the Rach, it was a red thread that was reflecting off her face. Kevin de Chazisinan, when she saw us, Pasikde le Pilcha, she stopped with her spinning shadise, and she threw the spindle or whatever it's called that she was spinning. Amra li ulam habli plach. She said, "Young man, you get me my spindle or whatever it's called." This says it's called a spindle. Amr ba Mar Ukva Milsa. So Mar Ukva said about her, made a comment. It seems to be about this Mishnah, about her behavior. So the Gemara asks, so that's what Rabbi Bar said. So now the Gemara wants to clarify, well, what did Mar Ukva comment about it specifically? My Amarba, what did he say? Ravina Amar Tava Bashuk Amarba. Ravina says this is the type of behavior of spinning in the market that our Mishnah says that if someone's wife does that, he could divorce her and she loses her ksuva. For Rabbanan Amri, but the Rabbanan said Medabersim called Adam Amarba. It was a case that she was speaking with everyone, meaning she wanted to get the Rabbi Barbachana to talk to her and to come close to her. So she used the ruse to throw the thing and ask him to bring it back to her. Or you could see that even spinning isn't a terrible thing, but it allows the woman to have a prop to then do other things. So that's unlikely that that's the pshat. Abashal Omer, Afa Miklas Yolda B'fanav. Also someone who curses his parents, those who gave birth to him, in front of him. Am Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel B'mkalalas Yolda B'fnei Moldav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, it's a case where the man's wife is cursing the man's parents in front of the man's kids. It could be her own children, but it might be her stepchildren. And that's also cause for divorce, not just cursing them in front of her husband. And a mnemonic to remember is that Ephraim and Manasseh are like Reuven and Shimon to me. So that's when, at the beginning of Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov was telling Yosef that Ephraim and Manasseh were going to get a portion in Eretz Yisrael, just like Reuven and Shimon. But what the drasha is, it's not a real drasha, but the mnemonic is Reuven and Shimon were Yaakov's oldest sons. Ephraim and Manasseh were grandsons of Yaakov. But Yaakov is saying that my grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, will have the same status of my sons. So the mnemonic is the grandchildren have a status of children for certain things, and this is one of them. For if you curse the parents in front of your husband, their son, or in front of their grandchildren, that's also cause for divorce. Amar Rabba. So Rabba says, what are we talking about? The way she curses them. The Amrale, she says to him, Nechle Arya Lasava, a lion should eat your grandfather. Or Ba'ape Bre, in front of his son. So I guess if she would say to her husband, the lion should eat your father, is also, we're not saying that to curse in front of the grandchildren is a worse thing, it seems, but it's also a divorceable action. Right. So Rashi says that this isn't limited. Again, to say that they're cursing the grandparents in front of the grandchildren, it's not, Rashi saying it's not limiting the case to that, but it's extending the case. Obviously, if you curse his parents to his face, but even curse his parents to his children. So she's cursing her children's grandchildren in front of them. Her children's grandparents in front of them. Rabbi Tarfon Amar Afa Kolanis. Rabbi Tarfon says also a woman who makes a lot of noise. My Kolanis, so Gemara says, what does it mean she makes a lot of noise? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel b'mashmas kola al iske tashmish. So when they're talking about did she go to the mikvah, what day did she go to the mikvah, she speaks so loud that other people can hear what they're talking about. So stuff that needs to be private, she's so loud that it doesn't stay private. B'masnisin tana, but we learned in a braysa b'mashameshes b'chatzar zu v'nishma kol b'chatzar acheres. So if they were having relations, and Rashi says that it was painful for her, so she would cry out in pain, and she would be crying out so loud it could be heard in the next street over. So the Gemara says, "V'nisan yegabi mumen b'masnisin." If that's what a noisy woman means, it should be listed in one of by the. We're going to learn soon a Mishnah. Not yet today, I don't think, but later in the parak, certain blemishes, that if a certain has certain blemishes, he would not have married her, and there's some cases she would have married him had they known about these blemishes. If she has so much pain from marital relations, that should be a blemish that, if that's the pshat, the kolanis, that she makes so much noise from the pain that she has from tashmish, it should be listed in the Mishnah of blemishes, or injuries, or that a woman has, and it doesn't mention it there. So the Gemara says, "Al mechavartik shanina meikara." So it's better than we answered originally. So kolanis is this private stuff about what day will she go to the mikvah or this or that. As she says so loud that other people hear. I mean, there are other sneeze things. A lot of people are it's a little bit before my time, but they're very critical that they built the mikvah on Tui, the busy street that people are going by there all the time and could see who's in the parking lot, this and that. It's not proper. I don't where the mikvahs were in Albany Park before there was a Western Park, I don't know, but I guess it probably wasn't on a main street. But and then there was when they put up a big plaque and it said the mikvah building, and then a lot of people were really upset it shouldn't say mikvah building. So then after someone died, I don't know if it was the donor or someone else, they changed the plaque and they just wrote the so-and-so memorial building. So it doesn't say mikvah on the outside of the building, but there are a lot, there are things. People aren't supposed to walk past the mikvah to see who's going in or coming out of the mikvah, which women are going in or going out. It's not just for men, it's probably for also other women. McDonald's over there? I'm joking.
I got told once years ago, could I leave because some women wanted to go in, and the entrance for the Kalim is
Right.
women.
So now, I mean, they have hours for the Kalim mikvah,
Yeah,
and so
I just give it to Sandy.
daylight hours, and I mean, there's some exceptions, but the main time that the women's mikvah would be used during the day nowadays is for a gerus.
Yeah.
So that happens. But that's not that wouldn't be a problem to see someone going if they're becoming a ger. That's problem is the tznius problem if they're just going because they counted their 7 days. In Israel, and I went with a friend once in Washington Heights before his wedding with the stuff. So I don't know why they don't do it in Chicago. I maybe it's the weather, but it doesn't make so much sense. They have a thing, you don't even have to go out inside. There's like a protrusion from outside. You lift up a thing and you just dip your thing in right there. You don't even have to go inside the building. So, I mean, it's yeah. Obviously, that water is connected to the other water, but you don't have to go inside. You could just you flip this top, and so it was like that in Washington Heights. It was dark, so we were able to use that at night. So I don't remember it so well, but it was like that. And in Israel, at Karen Biavna, I knew from some design of other mikvahs that they had something. So I walked around the building till I found it, and I probably was the first person to use in a long time, because most of the things in Israel you don't need to put the mikvah if you bought it from a Jew usually. But I think that I got something that said made in China, so I put it in there anyway. But yeah, so in Israel, it's a much less frequent occurrence to have to bring kalim to the mikvah, I think.
No. I think it's less frequent also, for some of the guys going, I don't know, Eitan, when he was into going in the mikvahs, we were in Israel one time and you have to call there or arrange it, ahead of time or something, or a little bit ahead of time.
For what?
To get in.
If a woman needs to go to the mikveh?
No, man.
Guess it depends on the neighborhood.
Yeah.
In the daytime.
Yeah, I think maybe it was in the neighborhood.
Probably depends on the neighborhood. May Sharm, you'd see guys all morning with their
No,
towels.
Right, this is not Measure.
Right.
Right.
So it depend on the neighborhood, yeah.
Yeah, no, this is more like Rehovot and stuff.
Okay. Okay, Mishnah. Hamakadosh as Isha Menashe ain't allowed nadar, v'nimtzu allowed nadar. If a man was Makadosh Isha, he gave her the ring and said Harat Mekudeshesli on the condition that you don't have vows, v'nimtzu allowed nadarim, and then he found that she had taken vows. So this is cases where the Gemara will tell us, but it's cases where she's making vows against, like she's not going to do. It's things that would be, it would be a affliction to herself, like she wouldn't eat meat or stuff like that. I don't want to jump the gun, but certain types of vows, ain't a mekudeshes. She's not mekudeshes because he did it on condition, and the condition was not fulfilled. He gave her the kedusha on condition that she didn't have nadar. Kinsa stam v'nimtzala nadar. If he gave her the ring for kedushin without saying anything, it was stam, it was plain. But then he found that she had nadarim teitze shelo b'ksuva. They would get divorced, and she doesn't have a ksuva. The Gemara is going to say, "What's the big deal?" We understand if he made so this second halacha is why it's in our parak, because we're talking about women who would get divorced without losing ksuva. But if he never made a stipulation that he had a problem with her making vows, what's the problem with that she had previously taken vows and that are bound, that she's bound to keep? So the Gemara is going to say what the problem is. So it's a similar but different case. If he gave her the kedushin on condition that she doesn't have blemishes, and then they found that she had blemishes, she's not mikudeshes, kinsa stam v'nitza b'mumin, teitze shelo b'ksuba. If he gave her the kedushin stam without making the stipulation, then it was found that she has blemishes, they get divorced and she doesn't get a ksuba. Kol hamumin hapsul b'kohanim poslim b'nashim. Any mum which is a blemish for a kohen is a blemish for a woman. So so if kolanis was a problem, it should have been listed right here. I actually saw it wasn't about this, but I don't know if you could apply. Some people say if a kohen has like a whispery voice or raspy voice that's not very loud. I saw Dayan, who is a kohen, he wrote about this. If the kohen is allowed to duchen, because the pasuk says in Parshas Naso, no, it's not in Parshas Naso. Somewhere in regard to Berachos Kohanim, it says b'kol ram, that they say with a loud voice. So some say if a kohen has an extremely soft voice, they're not allowed to duchen. It's like a mum. So I don't know if you'd say the same thing here, but it's not listed as a mum. It seems that that's not a blemish. It's just a problem with duchening. So it's not borrowed trouble. So the Gemara says, "Utnan nabi gabi kedushin ki gavna." So the Gemara says in kedushin we have the same exact mishnah. So why do we need the same mishnah here? The easy pshat for this is like I think I mentioned it about a month ago. Ramosha in 1999 in a share about Hanukkah was discussing the question: why is there no Masechas about Hanukkah? We have a Masechah about Megillah and about other things. Why isn't there a Masechah about Hanukkah? So Ramosha's answer was, at that time they still had Megillah's Tainus, which was a list of semi-holidays during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and that was Torah Shabbal Peh that had been written down. And so because they already had Torah Shabbal Peh that had been written down about Hanukkah in Megillah's Tainus, which is about half of Megillah's Tainus is only about Hanukkah, they didn't have to write it in the Mishnah. it ended up that later Megillus Tainus became completely nullified. But so Ramosha answered is that when Rabbi Huda Hanasi wrote the Mishnah, he felt there was a heter to write things that needed to be written down. But because the laws of Hanukkah had already been written down in Megillus Tainus, he didn't have to spill more ink to write it in the Mishnah. So sometimes the Gemara asks like this: once the Shas in one place learned this Mishnah, there's no reason to learn it again. Or 2 blot ago, we had about a machlokas between Rav and Shmuel that do we give her 1 week if a certain vow happened or a certain thing? Would they stay married for 1 week and then get divorced? Or do we get married 2 weeks and then get divorced? Because Shmuel says, well, maybe he'll be mater netter. And we had something on Daf like Nun Beis about it, and then we had it again on like Samach Tes. So the Gemara asks, why do we Rav and Shmuel need to argue about it if they already argued about it? So the Gemara says they were different cases. So here the Gemara is asking, we already have this Mishnah, we learned it by Kedushin. So why do we have to have this explicit Mishnah twice, written in Kedushin and written in Kesuvos? So the Gemara says, Hacha Kesuvos Itzrachale, Tana Kedushin Atu Kesuvos. Here, the main part of why we need this Mishnah here is that in the case of Kinsa Stam, they get divorced and she loses her Kesuva. That's the context of our parak. Situations in which the woman, where they get divorced and the woman loses her Kesuva. And so it mentioned the law about Kedushin, the first and the third clauses of the Mishnah, that if you gave Kedushin to the woman on condition that she didn't have Nedarim and she had Nedarim, the Kedushin is null and void. So it told us the din about Kedushin, but that wasn't the main focus of our Mishnah here. The main focus of our Mishnah here were the cases in which they get divorced and she loses her Ksuva. Hasam Kedushin Itzchale, Tana Ksuva Sata Kedushin. But in Mesachas Kedushin, when they taught the Mishnah, the main purpose for teaching the Mishnah is that if you make a Kedushin with a certain condition and the condition isn't fulfilled, the Kedushin become nullified. So the Mishnah taught that because that needed to teach you that halacha about Kedushin. And it happened to have 2 clauses in the Mishnah are cases where the Kedushin took place, but they get divorced and she loses her Ksuva. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzara. Be'elu nedarim shel amru shelo tocha basav shlosh tishayan v'lo tish kashid bevigdei tzivona. So I mentioned when we learned the Mishnah, what kind of vows did she make that she's coming into the marriage with are so bad that the Kedushin, that they would get divorced over them. So Rabbi Yochanan said the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzara that it's cases where she said she wasn't going to eat meat and not drink wine or not wear colored garments. So again, this is another case. I mentioned about the Mendel, the red dress is a problem, but we have explicit Gemaras talking about that that it's important for her to wear a colored dress. If she made a vow that she wasn't going to marry a colored dress, then she loses her ksuva. So Rashi says that these vows are bad because if she's not willing to do these things, which are, you don't need to eat meat every day, but if you never eat meat, that's inoi nefesh, it's an affliction, and he's going to think, something's wrong with her. Rashi doesn't say it psychologically, but it might be more understandable that way, because what's wrong with someone who isn't going to eat meat? Is there something physically wrong? Maybe in those days, they felt if you didn't eat meat, you weren't going to be healthy. But I don't think that's what Rashi means, but I guess it's possible.
No, that's strange because a lot of nations that time were vegetarian, including Mitzrayim.
Including who?
Mitzrayim.
The Mitzrayim, right. As Ali's been talking about for the past year. But yeah, but how many Jewish Mitzrayim were there? But this is also.
No, but that's strange. They say that we eat meat.
Right, but that was part of their religion. But this is a Jewish woman who voluntarily made a vow to abstain from wine and meat or wearing colored clothes. So that's so bad it would cause friction in their marriage that she's not eating it. Or maybe because she doesn't eat it, she wouldn't make it for him. I don't know exactly why it would be such a problem. But there's something that, Rashi doesn't say that she wasn't going to cook it for him. But the fact that she wouldn't do this, he's going to think that she's going to be
Yeah, at least you cannot taste.
Oh, while she's cooking it.
Right.
Right. If she doesn't taste what she's cooking, it might be bad, and he'll have to eat the bad tasting food. So Haviba Rapapa Ahaya. So Rapapa was discussing this Ahaya. On which part of the Mishnah was this talking about? Ilay Maresha. If it's on the first part of the Mishnah, which is talking about if you gave her kedushin on the condition that she didn't have any vows, if he didn't want her to have any vows, any vow that she would have taken should have been a deal breaker. The fact that it's only about, why would it only be a deal breaker if it was a vow against eating meat or drinking wine and wearing colored clothes? Ela Seifa. So this vow, this statement that Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Shimon ben Yotzarek, that the vows that are problematic is if she's going to abstain from meat and wine and colored clothes, is in the second case. It must be in the second case of the Mishnah where he gave kedushin to her stam without any conditions, and then she had these type of vows. So according to Rapapa, the first case of the Mishnah, if he gave her kedushin on condition that she didn't have any vows, if she had any type of vow that he didn't know about, that's a deal breaker. But kinsa stam, if he got him, what's the problem? If he didn't make a condition, why would a vow be cause for divorce? So the answer is because it's a vow on something that's a pretty on a pretty regular thing that he'll think she's nuts or something. Again, I'm not sure exactly what Rashi means. Shematis Gana, she will be, distasteful to him, whatever, pun not included over there. But Tiskana, Gnus, disgusting, disgraced by that. So something so usual as eating meat and wine or wearing colored clothes, if she took nidarm against that, so then that's cause for them to get divorced. Rav Ashi Amar, but Rav Ashi has a different shot. The Olam Aresha, it's going on the first clause of the Mishnah. So the first clause of the Mishnah though said, if he made a stipulation if she doesn't have vows. So it's only vows of the meat and the wine and the colored clothes that would cause the kedushin to be nullified. But if she had less vows on more mundane, minor issues, it's not such a problem. Umidi de kapu de inchi havi kapeda kapeda. If it's something that most people would object to, then if he's also objective to it, that's okay. But midi lo kapti but inchi lo havi kapate peda. But if something that most people would be okay with, but he's picky about it, then then the kedushin would take place. Meaning, let's say that she did have vows. So if it's a vow that most people would say that's a pretty crazy vow to take, then that would be cause for the divorce to be nullified. But if it's a vow that most people are okay with and he's particularly picky about it, that type of case, they're still married. So therefore, Rav Yochanan taught us, but if it was about, and that she said, I'm not going to eat meat, that's something that most people would say is a very strange thing to vow, and people wouldn't want that. Itmar, it was taught in a brayso or in a Gemara. Kitchal Tanayu Kinsastan. If he gave her kedushin on condition, but then did the chuppah without making any conditions. Can also means he brought her into his house. For basically it means did nesuin, which for us that's the chuppah. So Rav Amar tzricha mimena get, Ushmuel Amar eina tzricha mimena get. Rav says she needs a get, and Shmuel says she does not need a get. So the Gemara is learning that when he made a t'nai at the Kedushin, when he gave her the ring, he would need to repeat the t'nai at the chuppah. And if he didn't repeat the same condition at the chuppah, then we're saying that he's changed his mind from the Kedushin. That's what the implication is. So that also means that according to Shmuel, when he made the condition at the Tanai, at the Tanai at the Kedushin, when he gave her the ring, that condition is still in effect at the chuppah. That's what we're seeming to say that the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel is at this point. Rabbi, so Abaye says, as we turn to Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, Lo tema taima de Rav. Don't say that the reason for Rav is Keva Jekitza Stam Achuli Achli L'Tanai, since he did chuppah without making a condition, Achuli Achli L'Tanai, he's forgiving the Tanai that he made, meaning he's giving up on it. He's being mochalid. Ela taima de Rav, the reason of Rav is Lafishain Adam Osa Bilaso Bilaznos. A person doesn't make. When a person would have relations with a woman, he's not going to do it in a way that it would be for znus purposes. So from the fact that he did chuppah with her and now he's going to live in the same house, so that's the same as saying that it's not a public, it's not having relations in public, but it's publicly known that because they're married, they'll be having relations. It must be that so Rashi says that the Be'ila here, the relations were for the sake of Kedushin, not for chuppah. So in regard to the marriage, the wedding takes place because of this principle that a person doesn't make his be'ila a be'ila znus. But in regard to the money, in regard to the ksuva, he still didn't want to marry her for the ksuva part, so she loses the ksuva. That's how Rashi explains it. So I guess it's important to say here that there's different levels of znus. Actually, so for the most part, when we say znus, we think it's about incest or adultery, things that are capital punishments. But the Ibn Ezra, by the 10 Commandments, mentions Rav Saadia Gaon, who mentions 10 levels of znus. And some of the levels are not nearly as bad as incest or adultery. Amar of Saadia Gaon, znus has many levels. So the lowest level is having relations with an unmarried woman, whether it's a young woman, virgin, or a widow. But so having sexual relations not within kedushin is znus. There's no death penalty for it, but it is, according to Rav Saadia, the lowest level of znus. And the next level up is a person having relations with his wife when she's in nida, even though in a few days they will become permitted, but right now she's not. Then the next level, worse than that, is adultery. And the reason so if you see the levels are going up by what are the barriers for it to be mutter for them. So with an unmarried woman, you give her kedushin and then it would be mutter. Anita, in a few days, it would be mutter. With a Ashes Ish, with a married woman, if her husband dies, then they would be allowed to get married. And the worst level than that is having relations with a non-Jewish woman, because it's possible that she would convert and he could marry her. But it seems that the fact that he has kids with her, his biological kids are going to worship the avodah zarah of hers. And then the next thing is homosexual relations, because that's never allowed. Worse than that is bestiality. So the Ibn Ezra from Rav Saadia mentions many level of znus, and so when we say ein adam also bila znus, it doesn't mean that he's making a big avera. The fact that they're having relations without being in kedushin is also considered znus. We don't use what? So that would be a higher level according to Ibn Ezra, because it's a non-Jewish. So that's already like the fourth level. Right, this week's parsha. And then, but if you want to talk about this week's parsha, what did the Medrash talk about Bilam and his donkey? The worst level. Oh, that's what you meant. I thought you meant at the end, the Avera, when Pinchas killed Zimri. Oh, okay. So you have to be a little more explicit. Old guys like me, I misinterpret what you meant. So the Gemara says, and this is, I just mentioned a few minutes ago, that what's the importance of the Mishnah saying we already had this Mishnah in Kedushin, why do we need it here? Because we want to minimize the Torah Shabbal Peh that we need to explicitly say. So it said there was a Machlokas Rav and Shmuel. Here we have another Machlokas Rav and Shmuel. The Gemara asked, they already argued about it in a different case, so why do they have to argue about it here? Hapligi bechadazimna, but Rav and Shmuel already agreed about this point on a different sugya. The Inmar, because it was taught in, I guess, a Brisa, Ketana Shlomiana. So there's a Midiraisa, a father is allowed to marry off his minor daughter. It already seems from the time of the Gemara that was not a proper thing to do anymore until she was old enough to at least tell the father, I don't want that guy, or I do want that guy, and he would need her input. But what if the father died? So then if the mother and the brother would marry her off to someone, it has no effect on a Torah level. It only works on a Rabbanon, on a rabbinic level. And therefore, if by the time she's bat mitzvah, or at the time she's bat mitzvah, she says, I don't want this guy, the marriage is completely annulled. It's not, there's no divorce. It's an annulment. So, and she could, the annulment takes place by her coming and telling Beis and whoever, saying, a miyun. Miyun is like a word refusal. It's by the word chalitza, we have, the Torah says, me'ein yavami. She comes and says, my brother-in-law is refusing. So if the katana didn't refuse the marriage, the higdila, and she grew up, meaning she became a bas mitzvah. So once she's bas mitzvah, midirai, so she could decide, she could take kedushin from someone. Or not, but without a father, her mother and brother don't have the halachic ability to marry her off by themselves. Amda v'niseis. So she was married off by her father, by her mother and her sister and her brother. She became bas mitzvah, and she never had announced that she was refusing to live the guy. And then what did she do? Now that she's 12, someone else gave her kedushin, and she accepted the kedushin. What's the halacha? Rav Amar ein tzricha get misheni, u'Shmuel Amar tzricha get misheni. Rav says she needs to get from the second man, and Shmuel says she does not need to get from the second man. So Rashi does say that that the case of the miyun is that, so again, her mother and her brother married her off. She became bas mitzvah, and they had and her this original husband, they did have relations at least one time after her bas mitzvah, but then after that time, then she said that Then she said, I don't want this marriage, which halachically didn't take place. So Rav says she doesn't need to get from the second person because once she stayed in that first marriage after her bas mitzvah, so when the man had relations with her in no time, that was a new kedushin to work on a Torah level, because he knew that the way that he married her didn't work from a Torah level. So when he had relations with her, normally we give a ring for kedushin, but the first mission in kedushin says you could have kedushin through marital relations also. Chachamim were not happy about that. In this context, it probably was a case where it wasn't a problem. So we know that they were married already. So therefore, when she took the kedushin from the second guy, the act was nothing. She was already a married woman. So if a married woman takes a kedushin from someone else, does it mean anything? No, it doesn't mean anything. So she doesn't need kedushin from the second man, because everyone knows that she's completely married to the first guy, because she didn't do miyun, and actually she had relations after she turned bas mitzvah with the first guy. So that was a new kedushin, which works midiraisa. But Shmuel says stricha get misheni. Shmuel says she does need to get from the second husband, because Shmuel holds that even though she had turned bas mitzvah now, the first quote unquote husband, he wasn't doing a new act of kedushin. He's saying, I've been married to her for a couple of years already. I'm still married to her. He wasn't doing it out of a new act of kedushin. So Rashi points out that Shmuel agrees that the second kedushin did not take effect, because she is considered to be a married woman. However, the halacha is we need a get, so that everyone knows that for the 12-year-old to annul the marriage, it has to be by the time she turns 12, or maybe exactly at the time she turns 12, not after she turns 12. There seems to be a little bit of an analogy to the case of we learned back on Daf Yud Gimel about if there was a ger katan that the Beis Din was megayer, that higdilu yicholim limchos, they could complain about their gerus up until the time they become bar mitzvah. But once they became bar mitzvah, kept mitzvahs even a day or an hour, then they can't say, I don't want to be Jewish anymore. And we spoke about that when we learned that Gemara. So we see that Rav's opinion is ein adam also znus. So when this man had married this woman only on a rabbinic level, once she turned 12, when he had relations with her again, he did it. He didn't want their relation to be a znus without marriage. So he had intent that the relations were going to be for kedushin. So normally, I guess kedushin needs to be with Adam. So if someone gives a woman a ring, you need Adam to tell you, watch, you're going to be an eight. I think there's a chuvas harashba that you need that you need a minion also, but that's not. They put a cherem if you would get married with less than a minion, but you definitely need Adam. Even within a minion, you need to say these people are going to be the witnesses. For star, if you write in a star that Harayat Mekudeshesli, you have witnesses sign the document. So those are witnesses. And for Bia, you would say I'm going to be ball her l'shem kedushin, and you go into a room, and the people saw you go into the room. It's like the Eidei Yichud. So the Eidei Yichud don't actually see what happens in the room, but because they were told you're the witness, you're Eidei Yichud for us, so they would be the Eidei Yichud. So that's how it normally works. So even though, so the principle of Ein Adam Osa Bilasa Bilaznos would say, even though there aren't witnesses, the presumption that a person doesn't want to do this avera, even though it's not a strict avera like that has a death penalty, but to live with someone who he's not married, to have relations with someone who he's not married to, isn't proper. So he has intent to be married to her again, and it has halachic significance. A case where this comes up, I don't know that it comes up, but the Beis Din tells people is that once the husband gives a get to his wife, so now there's an ex-husband and ex-wife. There's a Mishnah Gittin. It's a machlokas b'Shamai Beis Hillel. I don't know if it's machlokas, but if they were seen going into a hotel room together, the presumption is that they got remarried again and they need a new get. Even if we don't have any witnesses that they got remarried, but we see them, let's say, coming out of a hotel room together because they had been married and they're still unmarried. They hadn't been married to anyone else, or at least the wife hasn't been married to anyone else. The presumption is that they didn't want to have an improper relationship, even though they're unmarried, but they have the relationship outside of marriage. So they must have decided to be married again. So then they would need another get. So the Beis Din informs the newly divorced couple that they shouldn't be in a situation where they're in yichud, where they're together in the same place without other people around. They wouldn't need another get. So since Rav and Shmuel argue by the case of this girl Miyun, why did Rav and Shmuel need to talk about it in our Mishnah? The kitchal tanai v'kinsa stam, that if when he gave her the ring, he made a condition, I don't want you to have, you're going to be married to me if you don't have vows, and if you do have vows, you're not going to be married to me. If he didn't repeat that, condition by the chuppah time, according to Rav, it's not that he negated his first original condition, but because he doesn't want to have an improper relationship with her, he decided to forego it. He changed his mind. What he said at the time of Kedushin was real, but now he changed his mind. But Shmuel says no. The principle of Ein Adam also be znus doesn't take away the fact, or maybe you'd say according to Shmuel that the condition that he made at the time of the Kedushin extends to the time of the chuppah also. But Abaye, was it Abaye? Yeah, Abaye said, but Rav's reason isn't the opposite. Rav's reason isn't that and making a double negative. It isn't that the condition doesn't stick, but the fact that he didn't make it again, the chazaka that people won't make their bilazo bilaznos overrides the factor of the tanai, and he decided to be married even without making the tanai. So the Gemara says tricha. No, they need to argue in both cases. If we only would have had them arguing in one case, we wouldn't be able to learn the other case. The eat marbahi. If we only learned about the case of the young woman, of the young orphan, about nullifying her marriage, bahi kamara mishum deleka tana. Maybe in that case, Rav said that the husband, the original husband, had in mind that he was being mekadesh her anew once she became 12 years old, because there's no tanai involved. But in the case of related to our Mishnah, when there was an explicit condition that he had made, Ema Modi li Shmuel, I might think that he agrees to Shmuel, and we could say that the tanai stays in effect. V'yid marbaha, and if they would have only argued in our case about the vows. B'ahad to Amar Shmuel, I might only say Shmuel holds in this case that the kedusha doesn't take place because there was a condition of a bahach. But in the case of the young orphan Ema Modi Leila Rav, I might think that he would agree to Rav because there was no condition over there. So Tricha, therefore, Rav and Shmuel needed to argue by this mission and also by the case of the orphan and the nullification or annulment of her marriage. Now, I guess nullification and annulment have the same root of null, so I don't know why I had to say that in both ways. Tanan. So we're going to ask against Shmuel. We learned in our Mishnah, Kinsa stam v'nim sola nedarim teitze shlo b'ksuva. If he gave her kedushin without a condition, and they found that she had nedarim, the marriage takes place, but they get divorced. He doesn't have to give her the ksuva. So the Gemara makes a diuk from the Mishnah. Ksuva hi delabaya. The ksuva is what she doesn't get. Hagita baya, but he does need to give her a get. My lav kitchal tanai v'kansa stam tiyufta d'shmuel. So what isn't this talking about a case where he gave her the ring on condition that she didn't have vows, and then at the chuppah he did not repeat his condition, and the Gemara says that the marriage takes place, but he doesn't have the ksuva. So how can Shmuel say that you don't even need a get? This would seem to be a contradiction to Shmuel. It contradicts Shmuel. So the Gemara says, as we turn to Ayin Gimel Amud Beis, lo kitcha stam v'kinsa stam. Now it's a case where he gave her the kedushin without any conditions, and kansa stam, and he did the chuppah also without any condition. So since he made 0 conditions, but it found out that she had a significant neder, so Shmuel agrees that the marriage took place, and she needs a get, but she doesn't have her ksuba. So then the Gemara asks about kitchal tanayu kinsa stam hachanami d'labaya gita. But if he gave her the ring on condition that she didn't have vows, and then he did the chuppah without any vows, hachanami d'labaya gita, you shouldn't need a get either. Adatani, because of what you taught, Hamikadosh Isha Manasha Ein Allah Nedarim. If you gave kedushin to a woman on the condition that she didn't have vows, Benim Tula Nedarim Eina Mikudeshes. That's what our Mishnah says. The kedushin doesn't take effect. Listening, why doesn't the Mishnah say Kinsa Stam Benim Tula Nedarim Eina Mikudeshes V'chol Shekain Ha? So if you married her, gave her the kedushin without any stipulations, and then you found that she had vows, she's not mekudeshes, then kol shekain ha. Then we should certainly learn in a case where if he gave her the kedushin on the condition that she didn't have vows and she had vows, the marriage should take effect. So if the Gemara is basically asking if that's the pshat in Shmuel, the Mishnah should have said a case that was a bigger chiddush. That if he gave her the ring without condition, Einam Kudesha, so we could certainly learn that if he did make a condition she didn't have vows, and it ended up that she did have vows, or not Mekudeshas. The Mishnah should have said an even more innovative case. So from the fact that it didn't makes it sound like the more innovative case isn't she would be Mekudeshas, not like what we just said. So hachinami kamar. No, the Gemara does mean this. The Mishnah means this also. If he gave the ring to a woman on condition that she doesn't have vows, and this is the part we're adding, and and they did chuppah without repeating the condition. So that those two words aren't in our Mishnah, but we're saying that Shmuel learns the Mishnah as if it said that. And then we found that she has vows, and she's not Mekudeshes. But if he gave her the ring without making a condition against vows, and he did chuppah with her without making condition that she doesn't have vows, in that case, the marriage takes place, but she doesn't get a ksuba. Ksubahu de lo baya hagita baya. So now the Gemara is saying, the Gemara here mentions that she gets divorced without a ksuva, but that implies that she needs to get a get, she just doesn't get her ksuva. Umaisha ksuva de lo baya. Why is ksuva different than the get? That she doesn't need to get, that she doesn't get her ksuva payment. The amri efshek shehi beisha nadranis. The reason is because the man says, I don't want to marry someone, a woman who makes a lot of vows. Ihachi get nami lo tibai. So this basically is saying that for him, this is a blemish. If it's a blemish, it's what we call a mekach taos. It's a sale on a false pretense. And a sale on a false pretense is nullified, is null and void. So then in that case, they shouldn't need a get either. Excuse me, she shouldn't even need a get. Because according to him, that would be a case, according to that husband, it's a case of mekach taos. He never would have married her had she known she had the vows. So she shouldn't even need a get. So Amarabba tzricha get midivreihem. So Rabbi says, no, that's true. It's a mekach taos and he doesn't need a get. But when the Mishnah implies that she needs a get, but she didn't need a ksuva, the get is only midrabanan. V'chein Amar Rav Chisda tzricha get midivreihem. And Rav Chisda also said the get is only midrabanan. Rava gave a different answer. Tana sfukim esafkale. The Tana of her Mishnah had a doubt whether she needs a get or not. Is this considered a mekach taos or is it not considered a mekach taos? So Gabi Bimona Lakula. So for the monetary payment of the ksuva, the principle in monetary law is we don't take money unless you could prove that the money is yours. But Gabi Isur Lachumra. But in regard to the Isur of an Eishes Ish going around, we can't allow her to remarry a question of Isser V'Heter without having a get. So he had a suffix, so he's passing that she needs a get, be suffix. But the fact that maybe she's married doesn't mean that she deserves the money. Because the area of Isser V'Heter has one set of rules. The Isser of actually making people pay each other for an obligation or for a supposed obligation, you need much more evidence that they really were married. So in regard to that, it wasn't clear enough that they were married. So for that, she doesn't get a ksuba. So we'll have to leave it here. And I forgot to say that we were going to learn for my Bobby Zortes today from Rafega Bas Moshe Leba Cohen